Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to the Jeffries network on OpenTTD. Today we are building the longest route, in that it's probably the longest non-express route that we're going to have on the entire network. It's going to run from the top corner of the map up at Sunnington, the northwest limit of the map, all the way down to Fort Flunwood via the two different branches that we've got. Now, instead of doing what I did before with Fort Flunwood and having one service with the conditional orders, I've actually decided to go for two different services serving all stations. I might in the future create semi-fast services that also do the same route. I've left plenty of paths on the line for that to happen. For those of you who don't know what paths are, it's basically a space in which a train can occupy. So on the main line there are freight paths, there's passenger paths, express paths, stopping paths. You get the idea. So at the moment we're just working on track work. We are building, as I say, right the way up to Sunnington. I'm actually really happy with how the route's turned out. It's got some nice sort of mountainous, hilly areas where the track is right high up, like on ledges. It's got some really nice areas where it runs through valleys. There's a couple of long tunnels, but nothing outside of realism, which I'm also very happy with. And just, I think it's a really nice scenic route. I'm really looking forward to getting the express trains running on it as well. Because of the passenger trains, they are running at 75 miles an hour. I have had to go through and redo the livestock trains that are currently running on the section between Flame Junction and just north of Guard City. That will be worked on in the future as well. We will work on getting the freight paths more occupied, try and get some more livestock trains going, try and get some food trains running towards Guard City mostly, but also to some of the other cities around the map. I feel like that would be a good idea. Actually get the freight on the map up and running proper, because I feel like it's a bit lacking at the moment. You did also see there I did some rebuilding at Flame Junction. There's now only three platforms, sorry, because I added a third one. There's 3 platforms on the DC lines, which will be handy when we start bringing in the metro services on that section as well. There are 4 platforms on the main line, 2 local and then 2 semi-fast / express. And then there are 2 through tracks in the centre as well. And that's a design that I copy a little bit further up the line as well at another station. In fact, I think it's the station I'm just about to build. So I think I started off by putting some track there and then actually end up building a very similar design. It serves 2 towns as well, so it's going to be a nice big station. In terms of the express stations, we don't have many on this route, which is kind of good. It means we can get a good fast service between Guard City and Sunnington, as well as from St Michael. We can now also have some express services running from St George, and that's good. It's good to have options. I read in my magazine, I think it was early last year, there was an article about the fact that there are 3 different ways of getting from London to Birmingham. 3 different operators, 2 of them operating on the West Coast main line and 1 operating on the Chiltern main line, of course being Chiltern Railways. And it's kind of the same now with Oxford as well. There's 2 different ways of getting to Oxford, one via GWR and one via, again, Chiltern Railways. And there are loads of other places in Britain where that is the case. There's lots of different ways of getting from London to other cities, more than you would probably imagine, depending on what routes you take. And that's what I want to replicate in this map as well. And I also want to go for something along the lines of the Thameslink program, which is kind of what I wanted to talk about today, but I've got some time, so I'll talk about lots of different things. But the Thameslink program, I will actually start talking about it now, because it is crucial to mention that in this part of the episode, because that is what this line is based on, or at least the services that we're going to be running. It's what they're based on. So the Thameslink program is the upgrade works that are going on at the moment, which is causing a lot of chaos in and around London. But when it's finished, I think it's late next year, they're aiming to get it finished by, it should be really good. And the key word there is should. So what the Thameslink program involves is the replacement of all Thameslink trains. So the class 700s are coming in very, very soon, the 8 and 12 car 700s. I'm not a big fan of that, to be honest. I feel like if it's a 12 car, it should be an 700, and if it's a 8 car, did I say that? If it's a 12 car, it should be a 700. If it's an 8 car, it should be a 701. That's what I feel. I feel like the fact that they're both considered the same class, even though they're technically two different types of train, I don't know. The only real difference is the number of carriages, but then there have been other cases where the number of carriages has changed the class of the train. It's nitpicking, I'll be honest, it is nitpicking. But that's the main bulk of the upgrade work, is what involving new trains. All the platforms are being extended to 12 car length. Farringdon was probably the most difficult one that they had to do, because they had to close the Moorgate branch of the Thames. They had to close the Thameslink branch to Moorgate from Farringdon because of the platform extensions, which is a bit of a shame. Because again, you used to be able to get to Moorgate from two different directions. Now you can only do it, I mean, you can still do it from the underground, but from Network Rail Services you used to be able to get to it from two different directions. Now it's only one. But yeah, upgrades of stations, upgrades of trains. London Bridge, one of the main reasons London Bridge is currently being rebuilt is so that the Thameslink program can operate through there. More Thameslink trains, also more trains in and out of central London. I've talked about London Bridge upgrade in the past, so I won't dwell on it too much this time round. But one of the reasons behind that is the Thameslink program. One of the really interesting aspects of the Thameslink program is there is a pair of tracks that go from St Pancras that join up with the East Coast main line just north of King's Cross via a set of tunnels called the Canal Tunnels. And what's interesting about that is currently Thameslink only operates between Bedford at its northern limit and Brighton at its southern. From next year there will be trains running between Brighton and Peterborough, and there will be trains running between Brighton and Cambridge, and onwards maybe to King's Lynn as well. That is very, very interesting. It's the first time that the Thameslink line and the East Coast main line will be linked together. Well, at least since the Kings Road and York Road tunnels. Kings Road? I think it was Kings Road. And the York Road tunnels were closed, God knows how long now, way before my time. But there did used to be, King's Cross itself used to have two platforms that went down underground that linked up with the City Widen lines, which are the London Underground lines and the Thameslink lines between King's Cross and Moorgate. It was widened during the 1800s to 4 tracks. Now 2 are the Underground and 2 are Thameslink, which is why they run side by side. But there did used to be 2 tracks that connected up there, so trains could run through King's Cross onto the Thameslink line. Although at that time, I think it only went as far as, I want to say Blackfriars, but it might have gone further than that. Now, of course, it does go all the way down to Brighton. But I think that's really cool that they're actually starting to run Thameslink trains right the way up from places like Cambridge and Peterborough. It's going to help with congestion on the East Coast main line. There's also talk of making Great Northern services into a metro style service with Thameslink running alongside it. So there's a lot going on at the moment in the north of London, but it does mean there's a lot of chaos going on as well. So it's one of these things. Alongside Crossrail, there is a lot of building work going on in London, and Farringdon is going to become one of the busiest stations in the country, if not in Europe, once it's all finished. I think they've said there's going to be a train leaving a platform at Farringdon every 20 seconds, which is incredible when you think about it. There are only 6 platforms planned at Farringdon, 2 on Crossrail, 2 on Thameslink, 2 on the Underground, and yet there's going to be a train every 20 seconds leaving. train every 2.5 minutes on both Crossrail and Thameslink, and I think they're planning on doing the same by 2022 on the underground as well. There are also 3 underground lines that serve Farringdon, so it is very, very busy, and it's going to become very, very busy. And I've been through Farringdon a couple of times in recent weeks, and it is a very busy station. There are lots and lots of trains already moving in and around the station, let alone before Crossrail and Thameslink starts operating at full capacity. The section between, I've already said this in previous episodes, but I'll say it again. The section between St Pancras International and Blackfriars will become the really busy section. And I mean, that sounds really bad, but there's only 4 stations on that section actually. St Pancras International, Farringdon, City Thameslink, and then Blackfriars. And then from there it all branches out again. I should also mention that Thameslink does also operate on the Sutton Loop via Wimbledon, Surbiton and places like that, and they also operate to Sevenoaks, I think it is, which is again a separate branch to the south. So there's only one real core route to the north at the moment, up as far as Bedford. There are services that terminate at St Albans, and there are services that terminate at Luton and Luton Airport Parkway. But Bedford is the northern limit at the moment of Thameslink. It's a case of whether or not Peterborough and Cambridge are north of Bedford or not. I don't actually know. I don't think they are. I think Bedford is still further north from my my very few times that I've been to Bedford, which was a long time ago now. Anyway, enough of that. Thameslink is going to be replicated on here. As I say, we're going to be operating this service. It hasn't got a name yet. I don't want to give it a name just yet. If anyone wants to suggest a name for it, you're more than welcome to do so. Bearing in mind it runs from Sunnington in the northwest corner of the map, right the way down through Guard City via Guard Lake, down to Fort Flunwood, which is going to be its southern limit for now. I might in the future create another link. I might also in the future as well run trains down the other main line that comes out of GSMA. Down through Shoreham Junction as well. There is one airport station on the route. On Thameslink there are 2, Luton Airport Parkway and Gatwick Airport. This one only has one, which is I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's not Great Winfield, it's Great Rinningfield. Hang on, I've got the screen open on my other monitor. Let me just parry over onto the right spot. So that's not the main line, there's the main line. Follow it down, follow it along. Rinston, that's the one. I knew it had a W at the start. I couldn't remember the name. Yeah, Rinston. So there is only one airport station at the moment. I might add another one in the future. Again, it's just a case of working out where. In terms of the station at Sunnington, there's been 4 extra platforms built on the eastern side for the local trains running on the northwestern main line, which again does still need a name. I've currently called it the trunk route because it is quite a key route on the map. You know, it runs from Guard City, and that includes the line out of GSMA as well, also called the trunk route, because it runs from the south of Guard City to the north of Guard City, so it's quite a key route. There's lots of services that are going to be using it. So again, name suggestions are welcome. If anyone wants to suggest a name, something maybe with trunk in the name, or core or something like that, just to emphasize the fact that it is a key part of the network. But yeah, let's talk a little bit more about what this particular line is going to be. So it's not going to have high-speed trains like the Western Reaches line, but it is going to have fast trains. I have been reminded actually from doing this when trains were coming up on the screen as do you want to get the prototype of these trains. There are the North Star and the White Star services, which were Eurostar trains, original Eurostar trains that were built to runs services between cities like Birmingham and mainland Europe. So they are slightly shorter than the default Eurostar trains, the 373s, but were still the same train essentially. And again, I think they were still considered class 373s, which is a little bit annoying. Capital Star, I think they might have been called actually, because they went to, well, they were planned to run to Edinburgh. They never actually ran on Eurostar services. Regional Eurostar, I think it was due to be called. But they were loaned out, or I think 2 or 3 of them were loaned out to GNER for a short period to run White Star services up to Leeds. Again, something which I feel like is a bit of lack of foresight for the designers. These trains couldn't operate north of Newcastle because of gauge clearances and curvature of the track, which really begs the question. They were called the Capital Stars. How the hell were they supposed to run to Edinburgh? Unless they went up the West Coast main line, of course. But how were they supposed to run to Edinburgh if they couldn't get through Newcastle? And even if they ran up via the West Coast main line, they do still have to then go the long way around via Glasgow. The short route is straight up the East Coast. So, lack of foresight there. Newcastle Station is quite a tricky one anyway. There's lots of sharp curves in and around Newcastle Central Station. But even so, they could have designed a train to navigate those curves first, and then all the rest would have been easier. Like, really easy in comparison. But there you go. But we are going to use the Capital Star trains on the northeastern side of the line out of Guard City, which is why I'm mentioning them. This side, I think we're going to use the 125s and the 225s. So the HSTs and the Class 91s. I think 125 miles an hour is fast enough. Maybe I will use slightly faster trains, although I can't think of any off the top of my head that would be between 125 and the 156 that the APTs can manage. So again, not 100% sure on that one. Now this is the first time actually that I've managed to get signalling right on this route as well. Every signal at these stations has been programmed so that only trains of a certain type are allowed through, so that the local platforms are served only by local trains, the express platforms served by express trains, and then the through trains, the through tracks, sorry, are programmed to allow any train that's meant to go through to the next waypoint on the other side of the station. I have tested it. I've run trains on both branches and they work fine. The only issue was one station was built slightly incorrectly, so that the platforms either side of the line were actually classed as 2 different stations. So when I tested that one, it obviously didn't stop on the way back because it was a different station on that line. That's been fixed now. So I'm actually, again, quite happy that I've managed to get it right first time, because it's not something I do very often. I put a lot of time and effort into building this line to make sure that it was as good as it could be. Which is why, I mean, I recorded for, I think it was an hour and 45 minutes, the original video length was, but because my editing software allows me to speed it right up, I actually got it down to 20 something minutes. I've taken it back up to half an hour initially, although this video could be longer, depends how long I talk for. I got it back up to half an hour again, but it always looks so much easier when you watch it back sped up in a time lapse. But when you're actually building it, I did spend a long time just sitting looking at it, making sure that it was all where it should be. You can see here as well I'm adding extra stations onto that little bit of the route. I had some more waypoints off camera as well so that freight trains can operate, and there's me adding some waypoints there as well for signalling purposes mostly. But yeah, I had some more waypoints on the line for freight trains so that they can slow down just before the junctions where they branch off in towards the freight terminal. But it actually looks like it's going to run really smoothly. The trains themselves run really smoothly. The trains should alternate between branches, so there's the Dintown branch and there's the Taddingham, I think it is. I know that I've abbreviated it to TAD. They're the branches south of Rinston, or south and west of Rinston, depending on which route you take. So we've got one service that goes via Dintown, we've got one service that goes via Taddingham. They alternate as well, that's what I was saying. So one train will go via Dintown, then the next one will go via Taddingham. Hopefully the way the timetabling works, the two branches are very similar in length. I think there's 200 ticks maybe between the two. I do know that when I was testing them both at the same time, the Dintown train arrived at Fort Flunwood first, but because of it going into the sidings and back out again, it's slightly longer to get in and out of the sidings on that side. It ended up getting back to Rinston second, so there might be a little bit of a swap over there, but it does still end up alternating, which is quite clever, I think, the way that the game manages to do that still. I mean, I take no credit for it personally. I think it's a fluke that I managed to get it right first time, but I am really pleased with it. I think the deliveries of the trains as well look really cool. You can see I'm building a new train care facility here, just to the west of Flaham Junction. The idea here is it's mostly going to be used for express trains, but there will also be local trains that originate here as well. Trains will go from here down to GSG, and this is mainly going to be used for trains running just between GSG and Sunnington. There are going to be some local services running just on that section as well. Not all the trains that start at Sunnington on this line will go right the way through to Fort Flunwood. There might also be some that terminate at Rinston Airport as well. And actually Rinston Airport is going to be become more important in the future as well, because I'm going to I want to get more trains that originate from GSMA as well and go down towards Fort Flunwood and beyond. The only way I could really do that with using the terminus platforms, I'm going to have them go through Shoreham Junction and then have a new line that comes off the main line that goes south of Shoreham Junction, branches round via a couple of new stations, and actually joins up with the trunk route at Rinston. There is space at Rinston for the tracks. I will need to create space at Shoreham to make it work, but it is possible. I have had a quick look at it and it is possible, and I really want to do that because again that's kind of reflective of real life, going through Clapham Junction from all the different terminus stations that head down to the south of England. I'm also building a new train care facility up here at Sunnington as well, just to handle mostly the trains that are running between Sunnington and Fort Flunwood. Again, I've done a couple of tests and I feel like 4 tracks was enough to actually cope with the number of trains that will be coming through here. I reckon there's going to be a train in Sunnington every 500 ticks maybe, so 4 tracks should be more than enough. There's 4 tracks in the train care, there's 4 tracks in Sunnington itself, so there should be a good ratio between platforms and trains. Anything else that I wanted to talk about? There is one other thing actually, yes. The time in the game. Originally, I was reverting it back to a set year at the start of every episode. I'm going to stop doing that because I know that it is messing up timetables. If you change the date in the game, the train is still expected to leave at the same time. So if it's meant to leave, let's say the 1st of June 1984, and I revert the game back to 1975, it's then going to sit there for 9 years waiting for 1984 before it will leave the station. That's never going to be good. So I have gotten rid of that idea now. We're just going to progress time. So the actual time in the game is going to progress, but the time period that we're operating in is going to progress a lot slower. So we are still going to have some routes that are steam hauled, we're going to have some routes that are diesel hauled, some in this case that are electric. That all 3 did coexist, so it is still within the realms of reality. It also means we can have a good mix of classic trains and modern trains. So we have started getting some double-decker trains coming in soon as well, which are going to go on the Western Reaches line, as I mentioned before. We're also getting things like the HSTs, which were developed a lot later than I remember reading about, to be honest. sort of felt like I was sat waiting for them for a lot of the time. But we have now got them running on the Great Western Main Line. We will have them running on other lines as well. I would like to have some running on the trunk route north, even though it is all electrified, because there might be some sections, branches that I build off in the future where they will not be electrified. So it would be handy to have some 125s running within the timetable as well, just like in real life. From King's Cross there are HSTs still running because the route north of Edinburgh isn't electrified, and also the route, I think it's to Leeds or beyond Leeds to Bradford, also isn't electrified. So it does make sense to have some HSTs as well as some 225s. Also, just operational interest. It's nice to have some variance. Gets a bit boring if they're all the same. Anything else? I'm actually struggling of thinking of things to talk about. The longest route. That's the next thing I suppose I could talk about. This is going to be the longest suburban route. There are going to be longer routes on the map. There are going to be, for example, routes that run from GSMA all the way down to the south coast, but they're not going to be served by a single stopping service. Express trains, yes. We might have one express train that goes all the way from the north to all the way to the south, and that would be our cross-country route. But stopping services, this is going to be the longest, because it is running for a very, very long distance, running all the way down to Guard City, and then pretty much the same distance again out to Fort Flunwood. There are huge gaps between stations at various points, which is why there aren't that many orders. I think there's like 100 and... let's find out. The longest route, which is the one via Dintown, has 101 stops. In fact, let me check that, because I think the other one does have more. 103 is the longest, and that's there and back. So if you include things like depot stops and things like that, there's about 50, let's say, stations on the route, which is a lot. I think Thameslink does have more though. I think Thameslink has 60 or 70 odd stations. So there is quite a big gap, especially on the northern section beyond the second main station after Flaham. So you go from Guard City, Flaham Junction is the next big station, and then it's the one that I can't remember the name of, and then from there to Sunnington there are big gaps. You can even see when I was building the track, between Sunnington and the next station along the route there is a long gap, and I haven't got a problem with that, because again it is fairly realistic. In Scotland there are big gaps between stations, and even in the south of England, in Kent for example, if you get on the Javelin between Ashford and Canterbury, it's about 40 minutes, or it feels like it at least, 40 minutes, where you're just going along. I think there's like 2 or 3 stations that you go through. Canterbury is the first stop after Ashford, and it feels like forever that you're actually on the train. There's a long way between them. So again, it's not beyond the realms of realism. Now the way I actually planned out the services was quite good in the end. I did the line from Sunnington to Fort Flunwood via Taddingham first, and then I did the Dintown one. And the way I did the Dintown one is I copied the orders and then just replaced the little gap between Rinston and Fort Flunwood. So it was quite easy in the end. The stops are the usual 250 ticks per just normal station. I think it's 1,000 at Sunnington and 1,000 at Fort Flunwood. It might be 750 actually, both Fort Flunwoods, and then I think it's 2,000 at the sidings at Fort Flunwood and 2,500 at the sidings at Sunnington. So it's to try and split the trains up, so there's quite a big gap between trains as well. Mostly because I do plan on running extra services in those gaps. So it's pre-planning, let's say. Something that I am trying to do a lot more of now is pre-plan, so that the trains run a lot smoother. less gaps, and not less gaps, less stopping. But that is about it for this episode, guys. We're getting the trains running, that's the main thing. Next time, we are going to complete all of the overground services in and around Guard City, which is going to be quite a big job, but I feel like it's one that has to be done now, so we can actually get some more services running in and around Guard City. The to-do list is also going to be part of the description from this episode onwards. I have now been asked if I could add it, so I will do that. Don't forget, the to-do list is not something that you guys can edit. It's only something that I can edit. It's just for you guys to be able to see what's coming up in future episodes. But that is it for this episode, guys, and it's also the end of this week. So all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you enjoyed the series, drop some comments down below with ideas for future episodes. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support, and until next time, I will see you soon.